What's going on, y'all? The video you're about to watch was recorded in like mid to late December. My original plan with it was I was gonna read every single book written by Sarah J Maas. I was gonna do like a deep dive into her as someone who's not a big fan. That video's coming in a few months probably because it's gonna take me a while to read all those books. And the first series I read was so bad that I'm not gonna be finishing that idea unless someone really wants to see that. I read the entirety of the acotar series, right? It was horrendous. I can't go on. I was gonna go acotar, Throne of Glass, Crescent City, but I'm not gonna read Throne of Glass or Crescent City unless anyone really wants me to. Yeah. But enjoy my reading vlog of acotar. Okay, I just got home from probably the most mentally taxing day of work I have ever had in my entire life. I actually broke down in the bathroom during the dinner rush. Usually I write after work and then I'll do a little bit of reading and then I'll go to bed. Tonight though, I literally am not in the headspace to write. I'm actually gonna do a lot of reading tonight. I started the first acotar book on my Kindle and I got 5 chapters in. So far, it's a book. Okay, I'm here to update y'all. I'm on chapter 11 of 46. I know I'm still like at the beginning, but this is quite literally a book and nothing else. Like, it's a book. Is there anything special about it? No. Is there anything I hate about it? No. I'm surprisingly really good so far at grasping the fantasy world, which I thought was something I was gonna struggle with. I thought, fuck, what's his face? Tamlin, is that how you say it? Anyway, I thought Tamlin was really hard to imagine, so I actually had to look up like fan art because I could not imagine what he looked like in my head. When I was looking up fan art, it autocorrected to Tampon acotar. So in conclusion, it's easier for me to call him Tampon. Therefore, he's gonna be Tampon to me now. I'm gonna do a little bit more reading, probably. Okay, it's like 2 days later and I'm at my sister's house sitting. I'm gonna do a lot of reading while I'm here. And I just finished chapter 21. Bro. I don't think I've ever read anything more uncomfortable and more cringy in my entire life. I can do spiciness. The dialogue was just a no from me. I'll update if anything changes. Okay, hi, I'm already back. I just finished chapter 22 and low-key, I don't fuck with Tampon. And I think Feyre, that's how I've been saying her name, like Feyre. I don't know, she used to be a huntress. She's good at what she does, like, and he's like, you're human, there's nothing you can do to help my people. Okay, but you don't have to treat her like a trad wife. He's like, I don't want you to live somewhere else because I could come home and you're gonna be here painting and safe. Girl, I have no strong feelings about Feyre so far. I don't hate her, I don't love her. She's just there. Anyway, the next update will probably be when I'm done with the book, so. It's a few hours later. I'm gonna give this book a 3.5 star. I'm not gonna go into detail about what happens in this book and how I feel about it until I get to the summary section of the entire series. So I'm just gonna give a brief opinion about everything. So we're gonna start with my favorite character. I'm gonna have to say it's Rhysand or Rhysand. I'm gonna call him Rhysand. He was probably my favorite and then it was probably Lucian. I found Rhysand so interesting. He was plotting and scheming the entire fucking time. He played his cards so well. I, however, did not like what Sarah J Maas did between him and Feyre. I really hated their dynamic. If she was trying to make some sort of like love triangle or she's trying to set something up for the other books, I'm not into it because they are not an item. I'm sorry, they can't be. I hated that wine shit, okay? I hated that shit. It was so gross and weird. I didn't fuck with him when it came to him and Feyre, but I think as a character, he was super compelling. And for the situation he was in, oh my God, he was so smart. He intrigued me. I didn't like him, but he intrigued me. I think my favorite scene out of the entire book, let me go through my notes. During the third task that Amarantha gave Feyre to complete, when she had to stab people in the heart, that was my favorite scene because you had the pleading fairy. He was like pleading for his life. He didn't want to die. And then you had the praying fairy and she was okay to die for Prithian because she was just saying that prayer and it was so emotional. I loved that scene so much. 3.5 stars. Next book. I know it's only been a few hours since I finished A Court of Thorns and Roses, but I did listen to the first 8 chapters of A Court of Mist and Fury. I have no opinions about this book yet. I just think it's worth mentioning. I started it and I'm 8 chapters in. Okay, it's the next day. I'm just doing my school and listening to the audiobook. I just finished chapter 12 and I'm gonna pop in here real quick and say, fuck you, Tampon. I can't stand your bitch ass. That's all I wanted to say. I've been reading for a few hours now. I'm on chapter 19. This book is fucking exhausting. There's so much info dumping. It makes my brain hurt. It makes me physically tired. For chapters 1 through like 15, I listened to the audiobook and then I switched to reading. Even listening to the audiobook made me tired. The plot is good so far. It's just a lot of info dumping and I'm like missing information, and then it'll come up and I'll be like, am I supposed to know what they're talking about? I'll do some reading later tonight, maybe. Am I wearing the same clothes as yesterday? Yes. Do I care? No. I have like 17 chapters left. And y'all know how I was saying after I finished the first book that there's no way that Feyre and Rhysand could be an item. I was wrong. They're like mates. Not that I was like a Feyre and Tamlin fan either, because I actually hated their dynamic too. But I was wrong. This book showed me I was wrong. Sorry. Ladies and gentlemen, Akamov has been conquered. Let's talk about it. Okay, so I'm gonna give this book a 3.8 star. Just like last time, I'm gonna start with my favorite character. I think Feyre was my favorite character in this book just because she had so much development. I like her a lot more now. It only took an entire book for Sarah J Maas to fucking make her main character interesting. My favorite scene in this book was probably when her and Rhys got like ambushed and she like went to go save him, because I was so into that. I was like, finally, bro, the girl saving the dude. There was less of like an imbalance between her and Rhys than there was between her and Tampon. Tampon was always controlling her, always above her, always knew everything, blah, 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 this and that and the other. But with her and Rhys, they were one. I liked it a lot. Dare I say I liked it a lot. One more thought before we get into the next book. Feyre went back to Spring Court at the end of this book because she could get on the inside and take down Spring Court and Hybern from the inside because they're all fucking traitors and they're stupid. SJM, I swear to Jesus Christ. Feyre is finally interesting to me. Finally independent. I swear to fucking God, if in the next book she loses that just because she's around Tampon again, I'm gonna fucking murk someone. Next book. I'm 15 chapters into A Court of Wings and Ruin. This is my favorite one so far. I know I'm only 15 chapters in, but this is my favorite one so far. I like how being at Spring Court with Tampon was only like a 10 chapter thing and it didn't like drag. I'm very, very pleased. I'm like 27, 28 chapters into this book, and take back everything I said about it because this is actually my least favorite out of the 3 I've read. The writing in this one is so repetitive. I did not see repetition like this in the other ones. I feel like I'm reading the same sentence over and over and over again, the same chapter over and over and over again. The first like 12 chapters of this book was so strong. I was like, oh my God, this is gonna be a good one. But now I'm like, these plot points don't feel like they're connecting. I'm also catching myself reading a chapter and being like, okay, what was the point of that chapter? And not knowing. Just know, if I didn't make the rule that I couldn't DNF any of these books, I would have DNF'd this book 5 chapters ago. I've been trying to sleep for the past like 2 hours and I can't. It's not working. What better way to pass the time than read? I'm on chapter 61 of A Court of Wings and Ruin. I'm ready to be done with this book. The lighting is a little wonky, so we're just gonna have to deal with it. I finished A Court of Wings and Ruin a few hours ago. My favorite character in this book was either Amren or Nesta. Like, Amren was not doing much throughout the book, but at the end, she really came through. This book definitely had my least favorite writing. It was very, very repetitive. Sarah J Maas was using the same terms over and over and over again. Bro, find other phrases. I don't know how many times Feyre could have sworn something flashed in someone's expression, or how many times someone made a vulgar gesture, or how many times someone mused. Like, bro, find new words. It's not that hard to find a synonym or even sentence structure that wouldn't require you to use the same fucking phrases. Let me hop into my notes. Fuck, this was such a long book. For me, this book started off really strong, and then it got boring, and then it got strong again when everyone went to war. My favorite scene in this book was probably when the King of Hybern died, and I don't know if it was because I was listening to Megadeth while I was reading that scene. That scene was bad. this. This book definitely got on my nerves a lot more than the other books. It was probably the best one plot-wise, but as far as writing goes, it was definitely the worst. I gave this book a like 3.2 star just because it had so much potential, but it didn't really live up to that potential. I'm not sure how long Sarah J Maas worked on this book for, but it definitely feels like she only worked on it for a few months. Like, maybe it was a little longer than it had to be. Maybe it could have been 100 pages shorter. Next book. It was a straight up fuck fest. I didn't even read the fucking first 3 books and I could tell that shit was ding dong. Yes. A Court of Frost and Starlight was definitely not needed. The book was not significant enough to talk about, so we're just gonna move on to the last book. I already have it fucking downloaded. 1 star. 0.5. 1. I got really sick out of nowhere, so I'm gonna have a lot of time to read. I started A Court of Silver Flames, and suddenly Nesta's the main character. She's pissing me off. She's really fucking whiny. I think I'm 13 chapters in. I want to be done with this series. I'm so tired of this shit. 200 pages in, all that's happened is Nesta has bitched and moaned. Cassian has been trying to train her, and she made him come all over himself. So I have been reading this book for a good week now. It is so bad. I can't do it anymore. I'm losing my mind. I think I have like 300 pages left to read. I am gonna thug this shit out tonight, okay? I'm gonna do a reading sprint. I'm gonna read the last 300 pages I need to read. I think one of the main reasons I hate this book is because Nesta's the main character. Fuck this bitch. She gets mad at everyone just because they wouldn't give her bummy ass swords. I know I'm supposed to be disagreeing, but I fucking agree, bro. Nesta is not mature enough to be this powerful, and she just ruined Feyre's like marriage, pregnancy, whatever the fuck. Nesta, I don't fucking like you. If Nesta's supposed to be a heavily flawed MC, own that shit, okay? But she's like, she'd done an unforgivable thing, and she knew, so she didn't care the punishment. Are you dead ass? If your character is gonna be heavily flawed, make them own it so I don't get fucking frustrated. Because then at that point, it's kind of funny. I fucking did it! I finished the series. I did it. All I want to do right now is go to sleep, so I'm gonna talk about this book tomorrow. So goodbye for now. Have we all recovered from A Court of Silver Flames? Because I know I haven't. I'm gonna talk about my opinions on that book at the end of this summary section, so you'll know how I felt about that. So I'm gonna start with the first book, and then we're gonna work our way. I am going to heavily summarize everything. The first book of acotar actually started off really nicely. The writing wasn't bad, it was actually really good. And the first chapter was starting already to reveal things about Feyre as a character and the world in which she lived. She talked about Prythian and the Wall, but in such a casual way that it didn't feel like info dumping. She was hunting for her family. It introduced that part of the story. So when her sisters came into the plot later on in the series, you understood who they were. In the beginning, Feyre kills a wolf in the forest, but it actually wasn't a wolf. It was a fairy. So the next day, a big beast breaks in to her home, and he's like, a life for a life, you come to Prythian or you die right here, right now. And in order to save her family, Feyre's like, you know what, I'll go to Prythian. It is later on revealed that this beast is Tampon, aka Tamlin, High Lord of the Spring Court. When they get to Prythian, Tampon's like, you can leave if you want, but that wouldn't be very smart because you're human. So Feyre's like, you know what, I'm gonna stay here, but I don't really like you. Until he gifts her like an art gallery and starts showing her the wonders of Spring Court. At this point in reading, I was like, this is very Beauty and the Beast-esque, and I was almost critical of it. So I looked it up, and it turns out that the first book is a retelling of Beauty and the Beast. I can actually applaud SJM for this because I could tell. I could feel that vibe, like the roses, the thing with the art gallery. It's almost like Beast giving Belle the library. This is the only book that has any sort of retelling in it, and I wish that she would have kept that like retelling of a fairy tale vibe. Unless she did. And if she did, I didn't catch on to it. Dude, I have the loudest neighbors known to me. Is he vacuuming? I think my neighbor's vacuuming, or he's like using a blender or something, but I can hear it, and I think you guys can too. So everyone in Spring Court is cursed with like these masks that they can't take off their face. The lore of this was like a curse came while they were all having like a ball or something, and the mask got stuck on their faces. Andrus, the wolf, that Feyre killed at the beginning of the book was over the wall looking for a cure. This will come in later. Most of the interior of this book is filled with Feyre and Tampon slowly falling in love, all while there is a blight taking over Springcourt. And this blight is actually later on revealed to be a curse by Amarantha because Tampon's 7 years of needing a girl to fall in love with him is running out, and she's like, your time's running out. Now, this thing with the curse is Tampon needed a human girl to kill a fairy with hatred in her heart for fairies, and then he needed to make that girl fall in love with him, and Amarantha put a little time limit on that. Amarantha's motives made sense as far as wanting to take over Prythian, but her thing with Tampon made no sense, so we're just gonna move on. Rhys is introduced in like this Springcourt holiday. I'm not gonna look back and try to figure out what this date was called because it was fucking stupid and it made no sense. This holiday never shows up in the series again. I'm not gonna go into the specificities of this because it was so unnecessary and creepy. So this is a quote from the book. What a ridiculous holiday. Absurd. Indeed, this plot point was absolutely ridiculous. Long story short, after Amarantha becomes a major threat to Feyre, Tampon sends her back to the human realm. He had a glamour over her family the whole time, so it was like they thought that she was caretaking a dying aunt. I forget the specific reasoning why, but Feyre's like, I need to go back to Springcourt to save Tampon because she thinks he's in trouble. Upon getting back to Springcourt, him and Lucian are gone, and she's like, I need to go save them, and she runs into her old maid Alice. There is the biggest info dump I have ever read happening in this moment. So then she goes to under the mountain to go save Tampon. She gets caught when she goes under the mountain, and then she's brought upon Amarantha and Tampon. Amarantha's like, if you can solve this riddle, which I'm not gonna go back and look at what the riddle was, but there was a riddle, or you can complete these 3 tasks, and then you're safe. But the riddle was like instant freedom for everyone. I don't remember what the riddle was, but I remember the first time I read it, I knew exactly what the answer was. But in the first book, Feyre was an absolute fucking idiot, so she didn't know what it was. The first task, she has to kill this worm, and she breaks her arm really bad, and she almost fucking dies. When she breaks her arm, Rhys, he comes in and he's like, if you make this bargain with me, I'll heal you. So they have a bargain now. Now they're like bonded. Rhysand is working against Amarantha from the inside the entire time. He's making bargains with her prisoner. Yeah, no, this genius knows how to play his cards right. Rhysand is never seen again in the series. Character decay. The second task that Feyre's giving is a threat against her and Lucian's life. A detail I forgot to mention, Feyre doesn't know how to read yet. So she has to read and choose like the right lever to pull or something. And she almost fucking kills her and Lucian because she doesn't know how to read and she guesses. Rhysand, since they're bonded now, moves her hand to the right one. Feyre not knowing how to read almost got her and Lucian fucking killed. A thought I had about this is that there's literally no consequence for this cheating that they do, which I guess is fine. People get away with cheating all the time. It's not like it's unrealistic. I would have liked to see that because I thought it would have made it a little bit interesting. And the third task, my favorite, because I actually thought this was really well written. Feyre has to kill 3 fairies. 2 of them are some randos, and I already talked about that. And the third one ends up being Tampon. But then she has a realization that they were talking about like him having a heart of stone. She'd never heard his pulse before. And then she's like, oh, he won't die. So she stabs him in the heart because that was part of the task, to stab them in the heart. That was the specific way she had to do it. Amarantha fucking throws a fit over this and starts to fucking kill Feyre, bro. In Feyre's dying breath, her idiot ass finally realizes that the answer to the riddle was love. That was it. If not the most obvious answer in the world, it was also really easy to figure out. So Feyre dies, and then all 7 lords of Prythian come together to bring her back to life as a thank you for saving Prythian. And she comes back as High Fae, and then her and Tampon go back to Springcourt, and that's the end of book 1. On to book 2, A Court of Mist and Fury. This is as best as the series gets because this was my favorite book in the series. This one is really hard to get through though. It starts off really slow, and it's just taxing. So the book starts off with Feyre being really unhappy at Springcourt because Tampon is being overly protective and not letting her do fucking anything. They're about to get married, and then as she's about to say yes to marrying Tampon, realizes that she's not happy and she doesn't want to be with Tampon, but she thinks it to herself. And remember how her and Rhysand are bonded because of the bargain they made? In this moment, he hears that she is hesitant and comes and saves her, so she can fulfill her part of the bargain. The bargain was, in order to get healed after breaking her arm, she has to spend a week of every one of her months at Night Court. And Rhysand is Lord of the Night Court, so she has to spend a week with Rhysand at Night Court every month. In this time with Rhysand, she starts to realize more and more that Tampon's not a good lover at all, which I've been said, but whatever. And Rhysand's like, he's not good for you. He also starts to teach her how to read. Feyre's back at Spring Court now after her week with Rhysand. Tensions are growing between her and Tampon, and her final straw is when Tampon locks her in the manor and she has a panic attack because she has like flashbacks from under the mountain. Because I like this a lot. She is actually traumatized from being under the mountain because what she experienced was traumatizing. I do like the fact that Sarah J. Maas acknowledged the fact that her character should be traumatized by what happened to her, and she is. So she's saved by Rhysand again after she's having this panic attack, and this time around she declares that she will be staying at Night Court. I think they were good for each other, but I will never forgive Rhysand for what he did to her in the first book, because that's fucked up. I don't care if he was doing it in good nature, it was fucked up, and weird, and creepy. Never touch a woman if she's intoxicated, even if it's just at the hips. Sarah J. Maas tried to justify what Rhysand did in the first book by it never being on her tits and never in a sexual sense. Why was he touching her in the first place? I just think it was creepy. It was weird. I'm sorry, it was weird, and I hated it. Since Tampon's ignorant as fuck, he's the only one who doesn't want her to train her new powers, because it's like he forgot everything she did under the mountain for him. Okay, she went through a lot for you, and all you did was sit next to Amarantha in the throne room. Chapter 16 of A Court in Mist and Fury was perhaps the most... Why the fuck was that chapter so full of information? That chapter was full of the lore and the next parts of the books all at once. I missed half of that information, and when it came up later in the book, I was like, what the fuck is happening right now? After chapter 16, I almost had a stroke, I think. I totally missed out why they needed the cauldron, but I have a sneaking suspicion it had something to do with the war with Hybern, so I'm gonna go with that. So they have to go to Summer Court to get one side of this book that they need to use the powers of the cauldron. And there, Tarquin is introduced, but I was pronouncing it Tarquin, okay? He's High Lord of Summer Court, and while they're there, Feyre is like on his dick. Not literally, but like she's writing that shit. Why does Feyre need to be into every fucking High Lord ever? Why can't she just be Rhys's... Sorry, that was gonna be mean. Why can't she just be Rhys's lover and call it a day? This is the book that is revealed that Feyre and Rhysand are mates. So then, while they're trying to get the powers of the cauldron, they walk into a trap set up by Hybern, and all of them are taken to Hybern. Tampon apparently was working with them because he literally went crazy and entered his little villain era to get Feyre back to him by force because he was obsessed. While they're there, Nesta and Elaine are revealed to have been taken captive by Hybern, and they're thrown into the cauldron right in front of everyone. They're turned into Fae. It's later revealed that they're more than just Fae. Elaine is a seer, and Nesta is like Lady Death. Like she has like these powers of death given by the cauldron, but that's revealed in A Court of Silver Flame. In order to get everyone out of this sticky little situation, Feyre and Rhys are like, Feyre's gonna pretend that Rhysand had a spell over her, and so she's gonna go back to Spring Court with Tampon, and that's exactly what happens. So she is like now like a spy for Night Court at Spring Court because she decided to go back. Now into the third book, A Court of Wings and Ruin. It starts off with Feyre back at Spring Court, still putting on this front for everyone, still contacting Rhysand through the bond. She's like spying on Spring Court, getting the ins and out of Hybern and Spring Court, right? She was so bitter, so vicious, so cruel, but you agreed with her because her motives actually made sense. I loved this version of Feyre. I loved it. Yeah, and then it fell off. The only thing interesting about this book was the war at the end of it, and her being a spy for Night Court at the beginning of it. So when she's about to leave Spring Court, she saves Lucien from getting sexually assaulted. That seems to come up a lot in these books. It feels like every other person has sexual trauma, which is kind of weird. Lucien goes from being relevant to being completely irrelevant. Either make Lucien relevant to the plot or kill him off. Oh my god, he was this close to being relevant to the plot again in like the last book, but we're not there yet. During the war with Hybern, Nesta, Elaine, and Feyre's father dies in front of Nesta, so Nesta and Elaine kill the king of Hybern. Rhysand and Feyre need to put the cauldron back together because Amren like unleashed her powers to save everyone. So Rhysand and Feyre need to put the cauldron back together, and Rhysand fucking dies for like 2 seconds. Doesn't contribute to the plot. He just dies for 2 seconds. His death was kind of pointless, but you know what was even more pointless? A Court of Frost and Starlight. The only thing that happened in this book was Feyre's baby that she's pregnant with in A Court of Silver Flames is conceived. That's literally it. Now we're on to the last book, A Court of Silver Flames. The worst book in the series, okay? And it was almost 800 pages long, and I almost lost my shit throughout the entire book. I'm fully convinced the only reason for writing this book was to give fans more smut, but not of Rhysand and Feyre because everyone was getting bored of them. Smut's fine. I am fine with y'all wanting to read smut. But from someone who isn't there just for the smut, which would be fine, it's lacking in a lot of areas, and I am here to criticize those areas. I have a confession about A Court of Silver Flames. I had to skim through a lot of this book to get through it, or I would have DNF'd it. I would have completely broken the rule, given up on this video, and DNF'd A Court of Silver Flames had I not been skimming. Where was the editor saying, hey, let's cut this scene out, it's not needed? Why the fuck were we talking about how much Nesta liked music for 5 pages? Why? Why were we doing that? Anyway, the plot of this book is Nesta's like ruining her life because of the events in Aquawar when her father died right in front of her face. So Feyre is like, you're gonna go to the House of Dawn, I think, to train with Cassian, and gives her a job in Rhysand's court library. Nesta makes 2 friends, Emery and Gwen. And if there was one thing about this book I liked, it was definitely their dynamic. I wish this book was about the 3 of them, but it wasn't. It was about Nesta and Cassian fucking each other. Nesta starts training with Emery and Gwen, and then when they get powerful enough, the blood right happens, which is like how you become like a warrior. So they're taken against their will, not sure why. I'm sure it was like a rule, but I just missed it because I was skimming, but that's my fault. Gwen, Emery, and Nesta finish the blood rite. All of them are fine, but then Feyre starts to have her baby, an Illyrian baby. But she's a high fae, so her pelvis is not adept to like birth this child with wings, so it's like a major risk that Feyre's gonna die, and the baby. Nesta uses her powers to like save the baby and Feyre from dying. In doing so, she gives her power back to the cauldron, so now she's powerless. And then at the end, everyone's happy. She loves her sisters again. Yay. Baby's alive. Yay. This series fell off so bad. The point of a series is that it gets more and more interesting with each book. The last 2 books weren't needed. My overall rating for this series was 2 stars. My favorite book in the series was A Court of Mist and Fury. Was it worth it? No. But if you like smut, maybe. And if that's your thing, more power to you. Go ahead and read this series. Go ahead and like this series even. And that brings us to the end of my discussion about acotar. I never want to think about this series again.